The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, the space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today. Today, we are again joined by our special guest, Dr. Stephen J. Ducat. Dr. Ducat is an author, political psychologist, psychoanalyst, and former psychology professor in the School of Humanities at New College in California. Dr. Ducat holds a doctorate from the Wright Institute in Berkeley, California. He completed his psychoanalytic training at the Psychoanalytical Institute of Northern California and holds licenses as a psychologist in both California and Oregon. He has a book, Hatreds We Love, The Psychology of Political Tribalism in Post-Truth America. That could be found on Amazon.com, and a Substack, Minding Politics, and that could be found at mindingpolitics.substack.com. And the Nova Society highly recommends checking out Dr. Ducat's work and supporting it. All right, Brooke, what do we got next?
Alrighty. So our next question is from Roseland, who lives in Tampa, Florida. And Roseland asks, I think we all understand that there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation in today's news. If you agree, how does media framing exploit the psychological tendencies of voters? Are they looking to speak to confirmation bias or motivational reasoning? What an excellent question. Yes.
Wow, we definitely have some armchair psychologists in the listening pool.
Yeah, there are many ways that the news media can facilitate misinformation and disinformation. And of course, I think it's important to differentiate these two things. Misinformation is just incorrect information, whereas disinformation refers to a deliberate attempt to misinform, to lie, essentially. And so, disinformation is more deliberate. And it is clearly the business model of MAGA media, like Fox News. And as many of us were aware of, the private emails between executives and hosts at Fox News were made public during the discovery phase of the Dominion voting machine libel suit against them, and for the big lie. And they were aware, as they communicated in these emails, Fox people were aware that failure to endorse the stolen election big lie risked losing viewers and a declining stock price. Tucker Carlson, in particular, said that if this information gets out, our stock price is going to plummet tomorrow. And in the course of this communication, they're obviously acknowledging that their product, which consists of stories that affirm the MAGA audience's tribal belief system, is a precious commodity. It's a hedonic, pleasure-producing commodity that, like a drug, their customers crave and demand. And that continues to be the case. So that's one kind of, disinformation, is that the kind of deliberate. And then there are the biases of more conventional fact-based media. And, there's so many of them, but one of them is something that, people call, stenography, where, you quote the leader or the politician and in your attempt to be objective. So it might be, today the president said he won't rest until all those in the deep state who have betrayed our country are behind bars. And now we go to Bob for the holiday forecast. Well, in one sense, repeating the words of the president is a factual report. He really did say those things. Of course, what he said was filled with lies. And so without providing context, those lies are affirmed. and the linguistic framing is normalized. And you could see this playing out and even breaking down in the first Trump administration, where lies were so constant that, and complaints of mainstream media stenography so intense that for the first time in history, mainstream news outlets had to say in their reports that things that the president was saying were not true. Whereas I think in another era, that would have been regarded as, kind of bias or advocacy journalism. But you cannot report the truth if you're simply quoting somebody who's lying. So, there are a variety of biases, and of course the confirmation bias that gets confirmed for many people is the legitimacy of elected leaders. But I think that there's so many outlets now, including social media, for misinformation and disinformation. It's no longer just a matter of what you hear in the news, but even knowing what is news and what isn't news is a challenge. So those are some of my initial thoughts about misinformation and disinformation.
I was listening to, I think it was Jamie Raskin, and I can find the I'll find the YouTube. Apparently one of the individuals who was discharged from the CDC, she was discharged by RFK Jr. In the report for the dismissal, it talked about transgender mice. They were doing experiments and creating transgender mice, and it was not what they were doing was working on transgenic mice, which I believe is cancer.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, what is that? That is cancer research. But I don't know.
Means just transferring genes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
It has nothing to do with transgender, but it's
correct.
a good example. Yeah.
Yeah, and but no one reported it. I don't remember hearing that on any.
I think it was
widely news.
It was widely covered by comedians who understood the difference and pointed it out.
But again, Republicans, for example, they're not going to hear that. They're going to hear the transgender, and
right. Their whole ecosystem is confirmation bias. They want to live they want to live in the world that they want to live in, and they have a news media, and it's not just Fox, and the other two, Newsmax, and the other thing. It's also for generations now radio, AM radio, and they have newspapers and all kinds of apparatus out there that confirms what they want to say. One of the roles that Heritage Foundation played was putting out talking points for all of them to talk about. And I remember the night that Barack Obama announced that bin Laden was dead. And I remember calling a friend of mine that night. It was about 11:30 at night, and asking him what he thought. And he just kind of was like, I'll get back to you on that. And then the next day, finally, Heritage Foundation came out with something and said it would not have been possible had it not been for the torture of the George W. Bush administration that led to the discovery of where bin Laden was. And that was all they needed. And that's what he mouthed back to me the next day. And he said, but it took, they had to wait until Heritage Foundation could come up with a spin on it, because there's no way that you're ever going to see Fox or any of those other media outlets say something positive about a Democrat, because they're not a news organization. They're the mouthpiece of the Republican Party. And everything that they say is going to be biased, not just biased, but blatantly what the Republican Party stand on something is.
Yeah, and I think it's also important for us to remember that this is not just one side. There are so many social media outlets that are more left-leaning that are just as bad. They will take something and spin it. Brian Taylor Cohen is very good at this, and he makes a logical. I mean, he isn't as obvious as, say, like Fox, where he says, "Oh, there's a war on Christmas" or something like that. He isn't like that, but he is creating a echo chamber for many on the left because they are hearing what they want to hear, and they're hearing it interpreted from their own standpoint. And I always say to all of our listeners, you have to be careful on who you listen to. You've got to critically and analytically think about everything. No one is above doing this because this is a business model. Fox, this is a business model. Brian Taylor Cohen, he makes money off of this. Some of those other ones, Pac-Man, another one, they make money off this. That's one of the things that separates this podcast from a lot of other podcasts. We take no money for it. So we're not oppressing any specific agenda by somebody that's a sponsor or anything like that. We take no money for it, so that gives us that freedom to speak actually our mind onto it. So if you go on to some of these social media platforms and they say, well, yeah, subscribe to this or whatever, and bottom line is they're getting paid and they're making a couple of $1 million off of it. You've got to question the motivations and the information that you're receiving. It may not be as intentional as malicious disinformation is, but it's just as much different disinformation. There's going to be levels of it. And I think that's something that we have to be very cognizant of. And Stephen, the thing I wanted to ask you was, because you made a great explanation of this, what do you see as the difference between confirmation bias and motivational reasoning? Is there a difference there?
I think that motivational reasoning, the way I think about it is that that's a kind of broad, that's like an umbrella category under which any kind of motivated cognition can fit. Confirmation bias is that it is. In other words, confirmation bias I would see as a form of motivated reasoning.
Oh, okay.
So that I tune into Fox or I tune into MSNBC, and I don't want to assert that there's any equivalence there, because I would argue very much against that. But that said, both the audiences for both are driven by confirmation bias. Now, it doesn't mean that that the bias that gets confirmed is actually false or delusional. Sometimes you can believe what is true, and you don't want to be having to wade through a bunch of lies. So, but it operates for everybody. So that I tune into a particular news outlet because my worldview is going to be reinforced. But this brings up something that I think is genuinely new in the world we live in when it comes to disinformation, which is that in old style dictatorships and autocracies and totalitarian regimes, the government would rigidly control what kinds of broadcasts could be out there. And that's probably still the case around the world in various places. But to the point, like in North Korea, radios couldn't be sold in the country unless they were soldered. the tuning dial was soldered to only receive the government broadcast. That's a kind of very crude form of information control. But what we have now is far more effective and far more sophisticated and requires no repression, which is you create a world driven by tribal passions in which people segregate themselves into information ghettos. You don't have to do the work. You're the autocrat. You don't have to do the work. You just have to do the work of getting people to identify with the tribe that you're proclaiming yourself the leader of, and people will confine themselves to those silos. And to me, that's far more disturbing than the old style version.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello, this is Sherry Hazard, and I'm really sorry to interrupt, but my podcast, The Folium Diary, is entering its last few weeks, and things are getting strange. I post a new episode every night at 9. Don't worry, they're short and sweet, like me. We've covered anarchy and astrology, decolonization and doppelgangers, Halloween with Frankenstein. That was fun. Start on page 1 and you'll catch up in no time. Please join me at the Folium Diary for a new episode every night until the season finale on New Year's Eve. Thanks.
Well, and now we've got social media. I keep thinking of that king. Well, I keep calling it the King in Yellow, with the 3 Democrats kneeling. That just was posted over the weekend and reposted by the executive person. I don't know if anybody has read The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers, but it's the first couple of, particularly the first one, The Repairer of Reputations, is not a pleasant story. If anybody likes horror, you can read that one. But yeah, I keep thinking of The King in Yellow, but yeah, now we've got, I mean, what type of message does something like that convey?
Well, so you have to describe the image more, 'cause I'm not sure if I've seen that.
It has Trump in the middle with a very ill-fitting armor. But the armor is big. I mean, it looks like a mechanical suit from a I don't know, like a video game.
Like a RoboCop.
With something like that, yes, with a huge crown on a huge throne, with what very much to me looks like a Third Reich eagle over his head, with 3 Democrats kneeling around him with their heads bowed. The one in the middle might be Alyssa Slotkin, I'm not sure. One is Chuck Schumer, and the other one might be Adam Schiff. I'm not sure. I can find the image for you.
Think Thanos.
Yeah. Oh no, I get it. I've seen multiple iterations of that. They're basically images of conquest and servility. Another iteration of that social dominance orientation that I mentioned. Where the world is restored to its proper order because the people who are at the top are ruling, namely Donald Trump, and those who are at the bottom are serving him and bowing to him. It's MAGA S&M fantasy, and in many ways, I think this relates to what's happening right now with prosecuting and threatening those Democratic veterans who advise soldiers not to follow legal orders. It's an iteration of the same dynamic.
Do you think that Pete Hegseth will actually follow through on court-martialing Senator Mark Kelly? I mean, how far do you think this will get? How far will this go?
I don't know. Well, if we assume that there are still, I don't know in military justice, whether they're called judges or not. But I think if there are still judges in the military legal system that are not simply flunkies appointed by Trump and Hegseth, then the obvious will probably prevail, which is that advising soldiers to follow the law will not be regarded as against the law. I mean, it's obviously absurd. However, if they can, I think MAGA and Trump regard anything as a win if they've caused their opponent to suffer or be humiliated in any way, to have to spend money on a defense. They don't really have to win in court to feel like they're victorious. This is about vengeance. And That vengeance is satisfied however they make their opponents suffer.
Yeah. And let's face it, Mark Kelly, I personally, Brooke, if they did bring him back, and they do have the right to do that, because up until he's 65, he can be recalled. If they were to bring him back, that would humiliate them more than it would Senator Kelly, because this guy's got a record that I'm sorry, it's impeachable. I mean, it is absolutely impeachable, the service that he's done to the country. And hopefully, my thought would be is sometimes, Trump picks those fights. We just saw the Comey case has been dismissed by a federal judge. We saw the Letitia James case has been dismissed. That causes great amount of humiliation for the Trump administration. Although just recently, Georgia decided the prosecutor has decided not to do the RICO case. All right, there's a way. So it goes both ways. But in essence, with the Georgia case, let's remember, the guy that took the case was the guy that was basically put in charge of finding somebody, and nobody else wanted it. So he basically took it, and if you don't think that he wasn't saying, geez, I got to get this off my desk any way I possibly can, and that's probably exactly what happened. I think if they were to bring Senator Kelly back, God, that would just not even be a fair fight. He's got a wife that was a congresswoman that was shot. He served his country. He's an astronaut, for cripe's sakes. That would be that would be ridiculous. It would be ridiculous on their part.
I mean, why pick fights like this that cannot be won? And then
it's a distraction.
It's also weak. It's just weakness on the part of Hegseth and Trump that they have to respond to anybody saying, no, you're bad. You're not right. People should refuse to obey your ridiculous, illegal orders.
Right.
And they're so butthurt by that they have to, take these measures to get him back.
I mean, let's face it, we're in a country right now that basically, if you agree that you have to tell people to follow the law, that's looked at as disobeying the law. I mean, that's just...
Yeah, I know. He obviously, Trump has psychological problems, but it just seems to me that as like with the Comey and Letitia James cases and being humiliated, that's simply going to make Trump worse.
Because he's going to blame that girl, Halligan or whatever her name is. That was running. He's going to blame her. It was all her fault. Everything was good on his end. It was her fault. Whenever something doesn't go right,
it's always somebody else's fault. I understand that.
Well, I think you guys are more hopeful and optimistic about this than I am. In other words, I'm remembering all of the cases that Trump lost. Look at the post, the 2020 election cases. He lost pretty much every single case. I don't know how many, 40, 50 across the country?
Like 60.
And,
60. It was 61.
Yeah, right. And did that diminish his popularity? No. Mind-bogglingly, no. He just portrayed himself as a victim. It's all a conspiracy. His base loved the fact that he fought back, even if he lost. And keep in mind that sometimes just having to defend yourself against a false accusation can do damage. Trump has done that over and over again. Maybe there was something to that. They lost in court, but, he had to actually argue that the sky, wasn't polka dots. And we can see that it isn't polka dot, but, I don't know, maybe we're just not seeing the polka dots. Part of it, his strategy is to create doubt.
Right. And he's a guy he's a guy who lived in court when he was a private citizen. He had plenty of lawyers out there who were willing to do his bidding, and everybody. Even when even the Zelensky thing, right, was all about getting Zelensky to announce an investigation of Joe Biden. He didn't actually have to do it. He just had to announce it, and that was enough for Trump So it's just the appearance that matters to him. It's not the actual substance of anything. He's a pretty superficial guy.
Yeah, a verdict is a cherry on top, but the dessert is the investigation and the case brought.
And he's beyond shame, so he bounces back easily. Like his whole birther gate, whatever they wanted to call it, about Obama and his birth certificate. When Obama finally said, "Okay, look, here's the damn birth certificate," Trump was asked, "Okay, now you've got the birth certificate. Can you shut up about it?" And he said, "I'm so proud of myself that I made this happen." He'll find a way to spin it some way or another that he comes out on top, and the people who believe in him will go along with it.
And you'll find, Stephen, that Scott thinks I am the optimist of the group. He always tells me that I'm the overly optimistic one of the bunch.
I find it absolutely adorable.
And I tend to be the alarmist.
He finds it adorable. And, this reminds me, I think it was Nietzsche said, and those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. Well, for the Trump people, we obviously don't hear the music.
No, we don't. No.
Yeah. And I don't think I'd like the tune to begin with, so that's okay.
When do I leave for Canada? When should I go? Right. Should I go now? Can I wait a year? How long do I have before they come knocking on my door and Mark's door and Scott's door, and we're all put in prison? And
it'll be all right.
No, I'm not. See, Mark says it's going to be okay.
As we close out, I just want to say one more thing.
Sure.
That if anybody were to pay us for this, I would continue the biased but honest approach that I have always had here. So don't be afraid of that, folks out there with money. We will continue the same high standards that we have right now.
That's right, or low standards, however you look at it.
And I'm still waiting for my check from George Soros, which has not arrived yet. So.
I think it's right next to the Doge check and the $2,000 that you're going to be getting.
Right, you have to go down to the Antifa office to get it. Antifa centralized office.
That's right. And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium dedicated to providing solutions to social and political issues for NGOs and international government agencies. Through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research, the Phoenix Research Group advances understanding and practical strategies for complex challenges. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.